Hello everyone, what is up? I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. I'm your host Ayman Hassan and welcome back to another video here at Most Amazing Top 10. Sorry if I sound weird, I'm not feeling well today. And if you think I sound bad usually, then I'm sorry I sound even worse than usual. So I think I've probably seen one scarecrow in my entire life and it was exactly what I thought it would be based off of what I'd seen in cartoons and stuff. But I feel like if I saw one at night in some abandoned field, I'd probably be like, what is that floating person over there? But there have been a lot of scary scarecrow encounters over the years as predicted, so let's hear about them. This is the top 10 scary scarecrow stories. Starting us off at number 10 is Albert Engel. Now this one's pretty messed up, but we like to start these lists with a bang now, don't we? Back in 1916 in Wisconsin, Albert Engel impressed everyone in town with his very realistic looking scarecrow. So much so his neighbors went to his house to ask how he had made it. But when his family answered the door, they said that Albert hadn't been home for days. The next day, another neighbor heard about the scarecrow and decided to check it out. But the closer he got, the more he realized that something was just off. It wore a wide-brimmed hat, so you couldn't really see the face of the scarecrow, but up close the neighbor realized to his horror that the scarecrow was Albert Engel himself. Police were immediately called and Albert's death was ruled a suicide. His hat was still on when he hung himself, so maybe people just assumed he was a scarecrow when perhaps that wasn't his intention at all. Either way, how did people think he was a scarecrow when he clearly had skin on his arms and not straw? But maybe that neighbor was the first one to see him up close, who knows? Coming in at number 9 is the friendly neighborly war. I mean, I don't know how friendly you guys will think it was after hearing about it, but yeah. Mary Hammond, a California resident, used to hate the sight of her neighbor Luigi Lugo. You know when you just don't like someone for no reason, but everything they do just you off, like them breathing, the way they eat, literally anything? Well, that was how Mary felt about Luigi. So in 1911, when he put up a scarecrow that looked exactly like him, she went insane. She went over to his yard, grabbed the scarecrow and brained it, beheaded it and tore it limb from limb. Mary was then arrested for battery but then was set free during trial because it was a bloodless murder. Honestly, if she did all that to a scarecrow version of him, I wouldn't be surprised if she ended up going for him in real life after that as well. At number 8 we have the House of Scarecrows. Now that sounds like a really shabby 90s horror movie, but thankfully it's not. This one comes from Redditor Killer Orange Cat. Now some people live in small towns, but this guy lived in a trailer in the hills. A small town would have been a dream for him, his words and not mine. But anyway, the user's friend had a 13-year-old brother called Brody, and they all thought it was high time for him to learn how to drive. They took the user's car, put Brody in the front seat, cracked open some beers and went on their way. The roads they were driving on had no streetlights and the roads themselves were poorly maintained and very old. The boys were shooting mailboxes with a BB gun for fun and they found a gated house that seemed long abandoned and the boys started shooting the gate, as you do. The gate was locked with a padlock, but they managed to break it open with a bolt cutter. The car drove in and illuminated a very old looking house and a bunch of shadowy figures in the yard. Somehow, I don't know how, but somehow the car got stuck behind something and everyone got out to try and unstick it from its area. When the user finally looked at the yard with a flashlight, he was horrified. He saw dozens and dozens of scarecrows. I'm talking different sizes, different outfits, different genders, and it wasn't just a shirt and a hat. They were properly dressed in recognizable outfits. Some were in dresses or suits. There were even children's scarecrows, which were the creepiest part. It seemed to be depicting a party of sorts. Either way, just as he was taking this in, his friend shot one of them in between the eyes, or in between the buttons, if you will, and that was the end of that story. Filling our number 7 slot is the floating hat. Now in Beaufort, Australia, a couple of kids thought they could pass their afternoon by throwing stones into a nearby reservoir. This was 1908, before you say why didn't they just play with their iPads or whatever. This is when people actually still went outside. Whilst throwing the stones, they saw a coat and hat floating in the water and just assumed it was a discarded scarecrow and proceeded to use those as target practice for the next 2 hours. After some time, the boys decided it would also be a good idea to check out the coat and the hat, so they did. They found the body of John Cuthbert's son, a retired engineer who had previously said he was done with his life. Police guessed he drowned himself and the stone throwers were never questioned. But I love how the first thing they thought to do when they saw something human shaped in the water was throw rocks at it. At least check first, kids. Now at number 6 is a scarecrow in the cornfield. Now this one's also from Killer Orange Cat. Apparently living in a trailer in the middle of nowhere lends itself to to a lot of Scarecrow stories, which I appreciate, so thank you. This one took place before computers and mobiles. He used to visit his grandparents who lived on a farm, and that farm had a lot of cornfields. Occasionally him and his cousin Carl would sit on the roof and look at the stars. One day his granddad needed help with the scarecrows in the field, and when he walked by he swore one of them moved. He didn't think anything of it, and that night him and Carl went on the roof to watch the meteor shower happening that night. The sky was obviously stunning, but when he looked at the field, the same scarecrow looked like it had moved again. As he looked away, the scarecrow apparently jumped down from its post into the field. He screamed and told Carl, and he also confirmed the post was empty. Carl figured it must have just fallen and they left it there. A while later, the user saw the scarecrow emerge from the field and then it ran back into the field. The next morning, the scarecrow was on the porch with no stuffing. Right, remind me to never visit a cornfield for this very reason. Coming in at number 5 is Mr. Rogers. Now this one is slightly funnier than it is scary, but I thought number 5 may be a good halfway point for some comic relief. In 1903, BC Rogers and his wife were on their way home via horse and buggy, and they were riding along a river. They were looking at the riverbank and saw a woman and a little boy standing there, but then all of a sudden the boy lifted the woman and threw her into the water. Mr. Rogers, the noble man that he was, stopped his horses and tried to find the woman but couldn't see her anywhere. The boy had also disappeared, so he had no idea what to do. He ran to the nearest village and asked 2 men to help him find the woman's body, but again they came up empty-handed. He went back to the buggy and went to the nearest farm and spoke to the farmer there about the incident, maybe thinking he might know where the body was. The farmer ended up telling him that his grandson had gone to the river and disposed of an old scarecrow by throwing it in the river, essentially making his whole day's effort good for nothing. But I feel like there are better ways to dispose of a scarecrow rather than just throwing it in a river. You can throw it in the bin. You can burn it, I don't know. At number 4 is the BADEN regiment. It's common knowledge that troops fighting for any side had to think of creative ways to stay alive during the war. So in 1914, towards the start of World War I, French troops were on the move, but so were the German BADEN regiment. To survive another day, the French decided they had to do something drastic. Using the fog to their advantage, they went and got a bunch of debris and sticks from a nearby field and made scarecrows out of them. After putting their own hats on the scarecrows, in the thick mist they looked like helpless soldiers. Some troops were sent to lure the Germans to the field, and when they saw the scarecrows they charged. They fell into the trap hard and they were surrounded from all sides by the French, and 100 of them were killed. After that, using scarecrows and dummies became a lot more common in war practice. If that was me, I would have been so that I got myself lured into this trap and it was just a scarecrow. Like, I would have been shooting myself in the foot, but I wouldn't have had to because the French would have been shooting me all over anyway, so there's that. Filling our number 3 slot is the missing corpse. Now in Wales back in December of 1953, a group of workmen were clearing some fields, which meant basically finding and throwing a bunch of debris into a bonfire. At one point they found an old scarecrow stuck in some undergrowth and decided to just toss it into the fire as well. But as the clothes started burning away, the men started seeing bones being left behind. Confused as hell as anyone would be, the men went back to where they found the scarecrow and did a little more exploring and came upon a set of false teeth and a skull. Obviously it was too late to save anything from the bonfire, but the police did manage to identify the body based on the dentures. They belonged to 66-year-old Ethel Winifred Collins, who had been missing since August of that year. Now at number 2 is the surprise. Now this one happened way back in 1909 in Pennsylvania. Maud Hefnagel was walking through a cornfield with her friend on the way to church when she saw something lying on the ground. She assumed someone had knocked over her dad's scarecrow, but when she walked over, she screamed and full-on fainted. To her horror, she found the mutilated body of her father on the ground. Her dad was walking home on the same path and was attacked by a bunch of men, and he failed to overpower them and he was hacked to pieces. His money was taken, anything valuable he had on him, everything was basically taken. A robbery that took a very twisted turn. The story ended up being printed in newspapers all around the country. I would also probably faint if I was going to a patch of grass and thinking it was a scarecrow but it was my dead dad. I think anybody would. Maud, I don't blame you. And finally, at number 1 are the wives turned crows. Female scarecrows are usually rarer than male ones, but they do exist. Now in 1906, 1986, there was a Hungarian farmer called Jean Plozzi who was slightly stingy, let's just say. When his wife passed away, he used her body as a scarecrow in his orchard to scare birds away from his fruit trees. If that wasn't weird already, the same thing happened with another farmer 4 years later in Amsterdam. Why all these men just using their wives as scarecrows, I really don't understand. Although the marriage was seemingly a happy one, the man still loved his crops more than he did his wife, and also dressed her corpse up in one of his old suits and made her a scarecrow. Neighbors freaked out at the sight of their once alive neighbor, now a dead scarecrow, and called the police on him. Thankfully, I don't know how thankfully it was, but thankfully he found out about it and removed his wife's scarecrow before the police got to his house. He didn't kill her for this purpose, by the way. She died naturally, before people think that. He didn't just kill her for this. He's not that messed up. But still pretty messed up for using his wife as a scarecrow. And that's it for today's video, guys. I hope this one made you think twice when passing a scarecrow now. You know, just gotta make sure they aren't real bodies or anything. Let me know which story was your favorite in the comments below, and as always guys, I'm your host Eamon Hassan, and I'll see you next time. Bye!